So let me start with Canada. For some time now, there is this case of students who the Canadians say did not study in the college which they should have studied, and when they applied for a work permit, they got into difficulties. From the very start, we, meaning the Foreign Ministry here, as well as our High Commission and the consulates in Canada, have taken up their case. And our point is that, look, the students studied in good faith. If there were people who misled them, the culpable parties should be acted against. It is unfair to punish a student who undertook their education in good faith. The latest report that I got, in fact, only this morning, was that I think yesterday the Canadian Prime Minister also kind of made a statement in the House of Commons there, and the Minister also tweeted something, and they have also been talking to our High Commission out there. I think the Canadians also accept that, it would be unfair. I mean, if a student has done no wrong, and I don't know if all the cases are the same. I mean, there is a granularity about it which, sitting at this distance, neither you or I can judge. If a student has done no wrong, they accept the idea that they have to find some solution for it. So we will continue to press, and I would very much hope that the Canadian system is fair in that regard. Regarding this float issue used, let me actually answer it, because I think there's a bigger issue involved, and the bigger issue involved is really the space that Canada has continuously, and frankly, to us, we are at a loss to understand, other than the requirements of vote bank politics, why anybody would do this. Because if you look at their history, I mean, you would imagine that they learn by the history and they wouldn't like to repeat that history. So it isn't only one incident, however egregious it may be. I think there is a larger underlying issue about the space which is given to separatists, to extremists, to people who advocate violence. And I think it's not good for the relationship, and I think it's not good for Canada. जो आपका जो सवाल था वो राहुल गांधी वाला, देखिए, उनकी आदत है कि वो जब बाहर जाते हैं कि वो देश की आलोचना करते हैं, हमारी राजनीति के बारे में टिप्पणी करते हैं, पर जो आपका प्रश्न है कि दूसरों पे इसका क्या असर पड़ता है। अब दुनिया हमें देख रही है, और दुनिया क्या देख रही है? दुनिया देख रही है कि इस देश में चुनाव होते हैं, चुनाव में कभी एक पार्टी जीतती है, कभी दूसरी पार्टी जीतती है। तो अगर देश में डेमोक्रेसी नहीं है तो ये ऐसा परिवर्तन तो आना नहीं चाहिए ना। हर चुनाव का रिजल्ट एक ही होना चाहिए। वैसे 24 का चुनाव रिजल्ट तो वही होगा, हमें पता है, हाँ। पर अगर आप देखें, जो ये पूरा नैरेटिव जो है, ये हमारे यहाँ एक देश में नैरेटिव बना है, और जब ये नैरेटिव देश में नहीं चलता या कम चलता है तो इसको बाहर ले जाते हैं, और उनकी अपेक्षा है कि बाहर का सपोर्ट जो है वो देश में चलेगा। मुझे लगता है कि यहाँ आम नागरिक जो है, जो देखिए, हमारे यहाँ जितने भी आप बीच में, हमारे यहाँ डेमोक्रेसी है, आपका कुछ भी होगा, मेरा कुछ भी होगा, आपकी पॉलिटिक्स कुछ होगी, हमारी कुछ होगी। हमें देश में जो करें, मुझे इसमें कोई इतराज़ नहीं, पर मुझे नहीं लगता कि बाहर जाके देश की पॉलिटिक्स को बाहर ले जाना देश के हित में नहीं, और मुझे नहीं लगता कि उनकी क्रेडिबिलिटी उसके कारण बढ़ेगी। द क्वेश्चन चाइना, लुक, आई सेड our relationship with all the major power centers, you can say, have evolved, because that is the record. I mean, you look at the US, look at Russia, even in these, with all these challenges, look at UK, France, look at EU, Germany, Japan, or if you take regions, Gulf, ASEAN, each one of these have advanced. And why have they advanced? They didn't advance by gravity and, by nature. They advanced because people worked very hard. That in each of these relationships, Actually, the Modi government has striven, it has put in place policies. The Prime Minister himself has sort of led the diplomatic efforts from the front. That we have tried to find areas of agreement, of collaboration, of working together with these countries. We have tried to expand the economic base, the technology base, tried to find security partners, and we have been largely successful. Now, why the exception? Well, in a sense, that answer can only be given by China, because China consciously, for some reason, chose in 2020 breaking agreements to move forces to the border areas and, seek to coerce us. So I think, it's been made very clear to them that until there is peace and tranquility in the border areas, our relationship cannot progress. So that is the obstacle which is holding that back.
Thank you, sir.
सर मैं मनीष झा हूँ TV9 भारतवर्ष से। सर इधर सर मेरा सवाल ये है कि रूस यूक्रेन युद्ध में इंडिया का स्टैंड और आपके जो स्टेटमेंट हैं वो बहुत सारे जो दूसरे देश हैं उनके डिप्लोमेट्स ने भी काफ़ी सराहा, उन लोगों ने भी काफ़ी अप्रिशिएट किया कि आपने जिस तरह से स्टैंड लिया, चाहे वो यूरोपियन प्लेटफॉर्म पर भी। लेकिन सबसे बड़ी चिंता ये है कि इस युद्ध की वजह से चाइना का बहुत ज़्यादा रूस के साथ रिलेशन स्ट्रांग हो गया है। कल ही उसके आर्मर्ड व्हीकल रूस में दिखाई दिए हैं, इससे पहले ड्रोन वगैरह आ रहे थे, इकोनॉमी में काफ़ी इन्वॉल्वमेंट हो गई है। तो वैसे स्थिति में आपको नहीं लगता है कि कल के दिन में भारत और रूस का रिलेशन पर प्रभाव पड़ेगा, खास करके तब जब हम क्वाड में भी उतना ही एक्टिव हैं? तो कैसे इसको आप न्यूट्रलाइज करेंगे? थैंक यू।
सर प्रणय उपाध्याय ABP न्यूज़ से। सर मेरा सवाल इस चीज़ को लेकर है कि आपने 2014 के अंदर इस चीज़ के साथ शुरुआत की कि पड़ोसियों को साथ लिया जाए, नेबरहुड फर्स्ट की पॉलिसी के साथ। भारत की नेबरहुड के अंदर चाइना और पाकिस्तान दो नेबर्स के साथ में रिलेशन डिफिकल्ट रही है। आप नेबरहुड पॉलिसी के लिए किन को फॉल्ट लाइन मानते हैं और कहां पर आपको लगता है कि जो आपके एरियाज ऑफ चैलेंज हैं जिसके ऊपर आप काम करना चाहेंगे?
संजय।
Sir, times now. You spoke about the northern border. You mentioned what happened in 2020. You said that unless there is a change from Beijing's side, you cannot, unless there is peace and tranquility, the relationship cannot move forward. But as of now, what do you see happening in the sense, do you see any kind of meetings between strategic representatives? Do you see any attempt by China at de-escalation, which comes after disengagement? There are two little bits of disengagement still left. What is the future, sir?
आपका जो पहला सवाल जो था यूक्रेन के बारे में, जो सवाल जो था, देखिए जो यूक्रेन में जो युद्ध जो चल रहा है उसके अलग अलग जो दुनिया उसका असर जो दुनिया पर है, ये अलग अलग रीजन्स में, अलग अलग देशों में उसका अपना प्रभाव होता है। अब रशिया और किसी और देश, चाइना हो या कोई और देश हो, अब उनके रिश्ते और नज़दीकी होंगे या दूर के होंगे, वो खुद तय करेंगे। हमारा रिश्ता जो रशिया के साथ अगर आप देखें, 1955 के बाद जब क्रुश्चेव और बुल्गेरियन आए थे यहाँ, जब वीटो पहली बार उन्होंने यूनाइटेड नेशंस में भारत का समर्थन किया था, उस टाइम हमारे रिश्ते जो हैं वो बहुत ही स्टेडी रहे। और इस दौरान दुनिया में बहुत बड़े परिवर्तन आए। माने सोवियत संघ टूट चुका था, कोल्ड वॉर आया, कोल्ड वॉर गया, यूनिपोलर आया, वो भी गया, यूरोप यूनिफाई हुआ। और आपस में अगर देखें रशिया चाइना के रिलेशंस, रशिया यूएस के, रशिया यूरोप के, इन सब संबंधों में माने कहीं अप और डाउन होता रहा। हमारे संबंध जो हैं बहुत ही स्टडी रहे हैं। और इसके कारण हैं क्योंकि एक दोनों देशों में एक तो लीडरशिप इसकी जो महत्व को समझती है, पब्लिक सेंटिमेंट भी साथ देती है। हम दोनों के यहाँ ये समझ है कि हम दोनों बड़े यूरेशियन देश हैं, पूरा यूरेशिया की स्टेबिलिटी एक किस्म से हम पे निर्भर है, हमारे रिश्तों पे निर्भर। तो जो आप कह रहे हैं, हाँ ऐसी एनालिसिस मैं पढ़ता रहता हूँ, पर आप हकीकत देखें ना, कि हमने पिछले साल में भी ऐसा कुछ रिश्तों को ऐसा कुछ होने नहीं दिया जिसके कारण कुछ प्रश्न चिन्ह उठे हमारे बारे में। तो ये मेरा उत्तर है आपके लिए। दूसरा जो है नेबरहुड फर्स्ट जो आप पूछ रहे थे, जो रिपोर्ट कार्ड मैंने आप लोगों के सामने प्रस्तुत किया है उसमें सबसे ज़्यादा अगर आप देखें, सबसे हमारी प्रगति भी नेबरहुड में हुई है, हमारी चुनौतियां भी नेबरहुड में, तो दोनों हैं साथ साथ कि बाकी नेबर्स के साथ नेपाल, बांग्लादेश, मालदीव, श्रीलंका, भूटान, इवन म्यांमार, आप देखें पॉलिटिकल रिलेशंस आर स्ट्रॉन्ग, रीजनल कनेक्टिविटी, माने एक किस्म से एक रीजनल, एक पहली बार यहाँ एक रीजनल इकोनॉमी बन रही, क्योंकि जब एक देश से दूसरे देश पेट्रोल जाता है, बिजली जाती है, सड़कें जाती हैं, रेलगाड़ियाँ जाती हैं, आज जो हैं हम बांग्लादेश के बंदरगाहों के उपयोग कर सकते हैं, जो एक बहुत बड़ी नई बात। तो एक लेवल पे मैं कहूँगा प्रोग्रेस रिपोर्ट में बहुत सफलता मैं आपको दिखा सकता हूँ, पर जहाँ चुनौती हैं एक तो पाकिस्तान के साथ है, और ये माने ये कोई नया विषय नहीं है, शुरू से ये क्रॉस बॉर्डर टेररिज्म माने उसकी चुनौती थी, और फ़र्क ये है कि हम जो हैं इसको बर्दाश्त करने के लिए तैयार नहीं हैं। तो या तो आप कहें कि नेबरहुड फर्स्ट के कारण हम टेररिज्म को साइड में रखें और पाकिस्तान के साथ कोऑपरेशन बढ़ाते जाएं, ये ना तो देश की सेंटिमेंट है ना मोदी गवर्नमेंट की सोच है। तो इसमें अगर पाकिस्तान रिश्तों को आगे ले जाना चाहता है, उनको पता है क्या करना है, इसमें कोई माने उनको पता है, दुनिया को पता है। और जो चाइना का जो है, जैसे मैंने अभी उनको समझाया, हमारी कोशिश थी कि चाइना के साथ, हमारे पड़ोसी हैं, देश के सबसे बड़े इकोनॉमी हैं, और हम तो चाहेंगे कि रिश्ते अच्छे हों, पर रिश्ते तभी अच्छे हो सकते हैं जब बॉर्डर एरिया में पीस और ट्रैंक्विलिटी हो, और जब कोई अग्रीमेंट हो तो उसका पालन होना चाहिए। तो अगर अग्रीमेंट का उल्लंघन हुआ और आपने पीस और ट्रैंक्विलिटी को कहीं छोड़ दिया, तो आप ही बताइए कि रिश्तों को कैसे आगे ले जाएं। तो चाइना के साथ जो टाइम्स नाउ का सवाल जो है, सी वी आर टॉकिंग, it is not that communications have broken down. So Sanjay, I'm responding to you. So the point is that with China, in fact, even on the day, even before Galwan happened, we were, talking to the Chinese, saying that, look, we are seeing movements of your forces, which in our view is violative of our understanding. The day after Galwan happened, in fact, the morning after, I actually spoke to my counterpart. And since then we have engaged, the military commanders have engaged, our embassies have engaged, I have engaged with my counterpart, and I continue to do that. When Foreign Minister Chingang was here in Goa, we had a long discussion. Even when I was in BRICS, he did not come, his deputy came. We had a chat on the side. Look, we have to, the two of us have to find a way of disengaging, because I don't believe that this present impasse serves China's interest either. The fact is the relationship is impacted, and the relationship will continue to be impacted. If there is any expectation that somehow we will normalize while the border situation is not normal, that's not a well-founded expectation. So your question, what do you, what can we expect? Look, at multilateral events, we will obviously the Chinese are there and we are there. It is likely that there would be a conversation between us. Bilaterally, since Galwan happened, we've had one visit by Mr. Wang Yi to India, but I think the main mechanisms, we have a mechanism called WMCC. And we have a mechanism called Senior High-Level Commanders Meeting. One is a kind of military-led with MEA in it. The other is MEA-led with military in it. These mechanisms continue to do the work, because at the end of the day, disengagement is a very detailed process. It's not something which is a kind of obviously you have to have a leadership level buy-in, but the details of it have to be worked out by people on the ground. So I think all of this would continue to happen.
Kavita.
सर गुड मॉर्निंग, मैं कविता जोशी हूँ सर, हरिभूमि न्यूज़पेपर से। सर मेरा सवाल ये है, अभी आपने अपने ओपनिंग रिमार्क्स में 2 चीज़ों की बात की थी अपने नेबरहुड के लिए, जो नेबरिंग कंट्रीज़ हैं इंडिया के। एक तो आपने कहा कि स्ट्रेटजिक क्लैरिटी, और एक आपने कहा स्ट्रेटेजिक कम्युनिकेशन इंडिया का बहुत ही साउंड हुआ है। मेरा सवाल ये है कि अभी कुछ दिन पहले प्रधानमंत्री ने पार्लियामेंट की नई बिल्डिंग का इनॉग्रेशन किया है, उसमें एक नक्शा लगा हुआ है जिसे अखंड भारत कहा जा रहा है। उसे लेकर के आपके पड़ोसी देशों में 3 देशों में, नेपाल, बांग्लादेश और पाकिस्तान में विवाद है। 2 मित्र देश हैं भारत के और पाकिस्तान हमारा शत्रु राष्ट्र है। तो सर ये मैं आपसे पूछना चाहती हूँ कि एक तो ये जो अखंड भारत को लेकर के विवाद है, इसमें भारत का क्या कहना है अपने पड़ोसी देशों को? और जैसे कि कल नेपाल के प्रधानमंत्री ने वहाँ की पार्लियामेंट में ये कहा है कि मैंने ये मुद्दा अपनी भारत यात्रा के दौरान उठाया था, जिसके जवाब में मुझे भारतीय पक्ष ने ये कहा है कि ये राजनीतिक नक्शा नहीं है, ये सांस्कृतिक नक्शा है। तो ये जवाब आपका केवल अपने मित्र राष्ट्रों के लिए है, जैसे नेपाल और बांग्लादेश, क्योंकि इसमें पीओके का भी हिस्सा है और पीओके को लेकर के भारत का जो स्टैंड है वो बहुत ही अलग स्टैंड रहा है। हम हमेशा ही ये कहते रहे हैं कि पीओके अवैध कब्जा है पाकिस्तान का और भारत उसको अधिकार क्षेत्र में कभी भी लेगा। तो ये जो आपका जो एक तो ये क्लैरिटी करें कि जवाब आपका यही है कि ये सांस्कृतिक राजनीतिक है, और पीओके को लेकर पाकिस्तान को लेकर क्या संदेश है?
Smita, go ahead.
Mr. Smita Sharma, I work independently. Just wanted to check, is India expecting President Zelensky to be in attendance during the G20 summit? Is there an invitation that has been extended, is being extended? And
Can we keep it tight? Yeah. Jaishankar.
मैं उमाशंकर हूँ एनडीटीवी से। आपने दुनिया के परिप्रेक्ष्य में बताया कि 2014 के बाद किस तरह से भारत का फुटप्रिंट जो है वो बढ़ा है दुनिया में। मेरा सवाल स्पेसिफिकली मिडिल ईस्ट को लेकर है कि 2014 के बाद किस तरीके से मिडिल ईस्ट में को लेकर हमारी जो डिप्लोमेसी है वो बदली है और क्या अचीवमेंट्स रहे हैं।
एक तो जो आपने विषय उठाया, जो नए संसद में जो नक्शा जो दिखाया गया, मेरे ख्याल से हमारे प्रवक्ता जो हैं इस पर टिप्पणी कर चुके हैं, am I correct? हाँ, कि उन्होंने कहा कि ये अगर आप उसी के नीचे वो कुछ साइन बोर्ड जैसा कुछ लगा हुआ है, उसमें लिखा है कि ये आई थिंक यू कैन रीड माय रिकलेक्शन, ये कुछ अशोकन एम्पायर का डिस्क्रिप्शन है। तो ये एक ऐतिहासिक जो लिखा है, इट सेज इट डिपिक्ट्स द स्प्रेड ऑफ द अशोकन एम्पायर एंड द आइडिया ऑफ रिस्पॉन्सिबल एंड पीपल ओरिएंटेड गवर्नेंस दैट ही अडॉप्टेड। तो इसको मुझे नहीं लगता कि राजनीतिक विषय बनना ही चाहिए, और जो हमारे मित्र देश जो हैं वो समझेंगे। अगर कहीं कुछ उनको क्लैरिफिकेशन चाहिए तो मुझे लगता है उसमें कोई बड़ी बात नहीं है, और जो मुझे जो बताया गया है वो समझ चुके। अब पाकिस्तान का तो आप छोड़ ही दीजिए, क्योंकि वहाँ ना समझने की आशा है ना हमारे यहाँ। अब मैं क्या कहूँ आपको, पर जो पीओके का विषय वो अलग विषय, क्योंकि पीओके में जो है हमारा स्टैंड बहुत क्लियर है, और हम ये खाली सरकार का स्टैंड नहीं है, पूरे देश का स्टैंड है, पार्लियामेंट का स्टैंड। तो उसमें माने पार्लियामेंट का स्टैंड है, तो उसमें कोई चेंज करने की माने पॉसिबिलिटी है ही नहीं। जो योर क्वेश्चन Zelensky and G20, no, look, in our view, G20 participation is for members of G20 and for the countries and organizations who we have invited to the G20, and that list we had declared as soon as we assumed the presidency of the G20. So it is not something that we have reviewed, and it is not something, very honestly, which we have discussed with anybody. The third question जो आपका जो मिडल ईस्ट का सवाल जो है, वो अगर जो मैं पिछले 10 साल की सफलता की अगर जब मैं बात कर रहा हूँ, तो मिडल ईस्ट ये एक ऐसा क्षेत्र है जहाँ ये आपको साफ दिखाई देता है कि अगर आप खाड़ी में देखें, ऐसे देश हैं जहाँ माने सालों से कोई हमारे यहाँ से कोई लीडरशिप विजिट नहीं हुई थी। हाँ, और जो हमने हमारे लिए एक किस्म से हमारे लोग वहाँ सर्विस करने जाते थे और वहाँ से हम लोग पेट्रोल खरीदते थे, तेल खरीदते थे। तो पिछले 10 साल में जो परिवर्तन जो आया है कि पॉलिटिकल लेवल में एक तो एंगेजमेंट बढ़ी है, बहुत कंफर्ट है हमारे। अब अगर आज हम दुनिया में देख के अपने मन में सोचते हैं कि कहाँ देश हैं जो हमें सपोर्ट करते हैं, उसमें से बहुत सारे देश जो हैं वो मिडल ईस्ट के देश। और मिडल ईस्ट के देश अगर हम दोनों जो हैं MOS डायरेक्टली उसको देखते हैं, मेरे ख्याल से गल्फ में तो हम आई थिंक ईच वन ऑफ अस वुड हैव पेड एटलीस्ट 2, 3, 4, 5 विजिट्स। और जो बाकी देश भी हैं, मैं इजिप्ट गया हूँ, मैं टूनिशिया गया हूँ, आप तो आई थिंक यू हैव बीन टू इराक, टू मोरक्को, अल्जीरिया। तो एंगेजमेंट उनके साथ बढ़ा है, राजनीतिक परिप्रेक्ष्य से हमारे रिश्ते जो हैं और नज़दीक आए हैं। तो और जो अगर आप ट्रेड देखें, वहाँ एक FTA भी हो चुका है UAE के साथ, व्यापार भी इस समय में पिछले 10 साल में काफ़ी बढ़ा है। तो मैं कहूँगा हर दृष्टिकोण से ये ज़रूर ये एरिया जो है हमारे लिए एक किस्म से डिप्लोमेसी, सक्सेसफुल डिप्लोमेसी का एक उदाहरण है।
Sachin.
Good morning. This is Sachin from the Times of India. Yeah, Minister, I just want to draw your attention to this press conference which was done by former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, I think in early 2014. And he was asked a question about what was his biggest achievement as the Prime Minister. So he said that the end of the nuclear apartheid in the form of the nuclear deal with against India in the form of the nuclear deal with the US was his best moment as Prime Minister. So I was just wondering if you would like to pinpoint something, as Prime Minister Modi's own best moment or the government's own best moment or a standout achievement in terms of foreign policy. And just as a follow-up to that, since we've already listed all the achievements which are quite impressive, I just want to ask you if there's any regret or disappointment about something that you could have achieved and it did not happen in the past nine years. For example, India's bid to become a membership, to get a membership of the Nuclear Suppliers Group.
I mean, we are here to hear
the fact that it did not happen.
Not the
I told Smita one question, you asked 5.
So
I think you are.
Please.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Madhurendra.
सर, मैं मधुरेंद्र न्यूज़ नेशन से। मेरा सवाल LSE को ही लेकर है। आज से 1 हफ्ते बाद गलवान की घटना के 3 साल पूरे हो रहे हैं। पिछले 3 सालों से अगर देखा जाए तो एक बड़ा विवाद और नैरेटिव के तौर पे पब्लिक माइंडसेट में रहा है कि क्या चीन ने हमारी ज़मीन पर कब्जा किया है या नहीं किया है। उस पर मैं चाहूँगा आपका स्पष्टीकरण, ये जानते हुए कि 2 पॉइंट पर डिसएग्रीमेंट हुआ है, 2 पॉइंट पर अभी निगोशिएशंस चल रहे हैं। और एक छोटा दूसरा सवाल है,
बिल्कुल नहीं, सॉरी,
कि पब्लिक आउटरीच आज से शुरू हो रहा है आपका, तो क्या 5 उपलब्धियों को लेकर पब्लिक के बीच आप जा रहे हैं?
करो, आपका टाइम
अगर आप
कम कर रहे
एक
हो।
सवाल से ज़्यादा भी पूछेंगे, मैं एक ही का उत्तर
आदित्य।
Minister Jaishankar, Aditya Raj call from TV9 Network. In the last 9 years, we've seen a paradigm shift in Kashmir policy of the government of India. We've seen Article 370 abrogation and a lot of steps. Recently concluded successful G20 event. How do you see this? And do you think this is a turning point on how the global community and the international diaspora and several others, especially the West, sees Kashmir from a different lens? Because you just spoke about changing narratives and India actually shaping the narratives. So how important is this visit?
Keep it short.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So let me start with Sachin. Look, you said that Dr. Manmohan Singh at the end of his tenure said what he said. Prime Minister Modi has a long way to go in his tenure. So I'm sure as and when that arises, he will say what he has to say, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But if you were to ask me, at this point of time, 9 years into Modi government, what are all the changes? I think in a way I tried to project that, I tried to project, frankly, a more self-assured country with a lot of changes happening, which is contributing more, which is caring more for its own people at home and people abroad, and which is communicating all of this very effectively with the rest of the world. So it isn't a single account and a single achievement in a way. I think there's been really very broad progress across multiple fields. And on even though you should not have asked the second question, but on Security Council, you all know where is the resistance from, but I would say one change which has happened is, if you today ask more and more countries today accept the need for reform, and frankly feel if there's one country which should be there, it is India. I think even in this process as a potential candidate, our credibility has gone up in this period. जो आपका जो गलवान वाला सवाल है, देखिए जो पोजीशन जो है ये बहुत कॉम्प्लिकेटेड है, क्योंकि हमारी फ़ौज भी, एक तो मैं आपको समझाना चाहता हूँ कि नॉर्मली जो है फ़ौज जो वो बिल्कुल LAC पे डिप्लॉय नहीं होती, वो अपने कैंप पे डिप्लॉय होते हैं, कैंप से आगे बढ़ते हैं। जो 2020 के बाद जो चेंज हुआ है, क्योंकि टेंशन तनाव के कारण दोनों साइड ने फॉरवर्ड डिप्लॉयमेंट की, और ये फॉरवर्ड डिप्लॉयमेंट, ये मुद्दा जो है हमें इसको रिजॉल्व करना है। तो ये जो जिस तरीके से आपने ये प्रश्न पूछा कि ज़मीन का है या नहीं है, वो इशू नहीं है, इशू फॉरवर्ड डिप्लॉयमेंट का है कि दोनों लोग बहुत एक दूसरे के बहुत नज़दीक फॉरवर्ड डिप्लॉयमेंट कर रहे हैं, और उसके कारण ये तनाव माने कहीं हिंसा की तरफ जा सकता है, जैसे आपने गलवान में देखा था। जो आपका सवाल जो है अनुच्छेद 370 वाला, ऑन कश्मीर, first of all, I do think that what was done in 2019 was a very, very crucial step and a long-awaited step for national security. Because in a way, we can, it's a long story, and you know this better than me, why 370 was kept beyond what was supposed to be its shelf life. But the bottom line was, I'm now giving you a kind of a diplomatic perspective. The whole world used it against us. They saw it as a point of vulnerability. They saw it as something they should keep pressing and keep using and keep turning as a way of keeping India off balance. Now, if we don't get it right, how do you expect the world to get it right? So, for us, the first thing was to remediate at home. And that is what we did in 2019. Now, once you sorted it out at home, then the question was, how then does the world react to it? Now, even when 370 happened, and fact was, in 2019, we had to actually, when I speak about strategic communication, as a foreign ministry, as a minister myself at that time, we spent a lot of time getting people to understand what it was about. And our biggest problem was a lot of, frankly, false narratives or propaganda, much of which originated in our own country. So we had to deal with that, and I think we dealt with it. And because we dealt with it today, if you go around the world today and ask people, sort of, when it comes to India, what are your concerns, you will find more and more people actually will say that's kind of, that's not something which is a live issue, because we were the people who kept it as a live issue. So to me, what happened in G20 is just one example. But I would like to see, quite honestly, more investment there, more foreign tourists there. I see no reason why Jammu and Kashmir should be denied the benefits not only of development, but of globalization that the rest of India has experienced. I think it is their right, and I think we should promote that very strongly.
Huma. Right here.
Sir, I'm Huma Siddiqui from the Financial Express. In your opening statement, you did not mention anything about the Latin American region except the ferry to Guyana. And so in that context, I just wanted to understand, is India looking at buying crude from Venezuela anytime soon?
Sorry? Buying crude from Venezuela?
Venezuela. And any other countries where you are expanding buying crude in the region?
Okay. Sir,
yeah, sorry.
Siddhant.
So Siddhant from Vion. So my question to you is my question to you is, the Canadian NSA has said that India has been interfering in their domestic politics. Your reaction to this comment by the Canadian NSA?
Kalol.
Kalol from the Hindu, sir. Sir, one of your first policies, one of the first policies of the Modi government was the Act East policy. Today, we see what's happening in Manipur. Do you think the developments in Manipur have basically negatively impacted that policy?
Latin America. I didn't mention many regions, and I would not in any way like you or anybody else to think we are less invested in that region simply because there was no explicit remark by me. Again, I've spoken about different parts of the world where all of us have been far more active, starting with Prime Minister himself. And the intensity of our visits, the projects, the trade, the political cooperation, each one of this applies in full measure to Latin America. I myself have done 2 trips, one where I did Brazil, Paraguay, Argentina, one which I did Colombia, Guyana, Panama, and Dominican Republic. In fact, I must tell you, even to me, it came as a surprise that the last 4 countries, no foreign minister in our history had ever been there. Even Mexico, I found that the last foreign minister when there was Narasimha Rao. So there have been big gaps in our engagement with other regions, and to be very frank, it affects our credibility. How can you export support from a country which nobody has even bothered to go and visit? So it is taxing, but if we are trying to develop a global footprint, because that is also a point I want to make. When Prime Minister speaks about Amrit Kal and where we will be, a large part of it is development of the country. The foreign policy part of it is to develop a global footprint in those 25 years. So you remember in 2015, I think he used the word first time, towards becoming a leading power. That was the foreign policy trailer of his Amrit Kal goal. So we today want to be much more, and Meenakshi ji, I think, has made multiple trips as well to Latin America. So our idea really is to see, we would not, I cannot say we would like to cover every country in the world, but we would certainly like to cover as many countries at a ministerial level. The 4 of us need to do as much as we can, and we are working very hard at it. But if you look at the progress in it, today our trade with Latin America is coming close to $50 billion. Now, relatively speaking, if you look at various big trade accounts, China, ASEAN, etc., mostly our big trade accounts are 100 billion plus. So already, there is a big push, and when you go there, I took a business delegation as well with me. I see great deal of interest in Indian business in being out there. Specifically oil imports. Look, Venezuela, first of all, Venezuela had its own complications because there were secondary sanctions, and the oil importing companies take their own call when it comes to secondary sanctions. But Latin America, I know our investments in Brazil have increased. When I was there, in fact, an expanded agreement was signed. There are a lot of new finds in Latin America. I think there's a lot of interest in looking at that. Your question, Siddhant, about the Canadian NSA's remark. I was, what shall I say? Okay. The phrase which came to my mind was actually a Hindi phrase, which was Ulta Chor Kotwal Ko Dante. If anybody has a complaint, we have a complaint about Canada. What I said earlier, the space that they're giving to Khalistanis and to violent extremists. So I was very perplexed by what I heard. The Act East, look, what has happened with the East, and again, my colleague Dr. Ranjan would bear me out. He is himself from Manipur. Where Act East is concerned, in the last 9 years, there's been an upgrade in the sense there have been deeper investments, more projects. We do much more on security. Earlier on, the focus was, let's do mainly economics. I think connectivity, security, deeper people-to-people collaboration, stronger political collaboration. I think these have been the new facets really which have been added in the last 9 years. I think what is happening in Manipur is largely an issue of Manipur, and I think in that part of the world people do understand that. So I would not really mix apples and oranges here. I think the Act East policy, the progress of the Act East policy, which has been quite considerable in the 9 years, I think will continue, and hopefully the situation in Manipur will also ameliorate.
Sorry, microphone's next to you. No, yes, please.
Rishikesh from the Press Trust of India. So my question is, over the issue of extradition of people indulged in financial fraud or in terrorism, we haven't seen much success in past 4 years. So my question is, what are the reasons behind this, and can we see much success in coming months, especially ahead of 24 elections?
नीरज
सर, नीरज हूँ न्यूज 18 इंडिया से। आपने कहा कि भारत और चीन के बीच एलएसी मसले के बाद फॉरवर्ड डिप्लॉयमेंट का मसला है, और राहुल गांधी के बारे में आपने ये भी कहा कि उन्हें घरेलू मोर्चे पर अपनी बात रखनी चाहिए, न कि विदेश की धरती पर। वो बार बार घरेलू मोर्चे पर एक बात कहते हैं कि चीन ने भारत के एक बड़े भूभाग पर कब्जा कर लिया है। पिछले 9 साल में अगर फॉरवर्ड डिप्लॉयमेंट इशू को छोड़ दे तो उसके अलावा आप कह सकते हैं कि चीन ने भारत की जमीन पे कब्जा नहीं किया है, या फिर राहुल गांधी निराधार बयान दे रहे हैं?
Manush.
So this is Manas Pratim from PTI Press Trust of India. Sir, India's relations with United States and Russia, we have seen a significant upswing in the last few years actually, notwithstanding the current geopolitical turmoil as well as big power competitions. So how do you characterize this? And going forward, do you think in fact if the conflict between West and Asia or the overall conflict, great power competition widens, such an approach sustainable, sir? So, and one would just added question is that, I mean, in the BRICS Cape Town declaration, it was mentioned that, the countries are looking for a mediation proposal. So would you like to just...
Mediation? It's a different question.
Yeah.
Sorry. The first question, जो आपका जो extradition वाला question जो था, no, there are pending extradition requests with many countries. You can see the progress. You can see the progress in their systems, that the cases are going to one level of court, next level of court, and it is proceeding towards an extradition. We have had a few cases. Obviously, in some of the high-profile cases, we are waiting for those to come to the conclusion. जो आपने पूछा, can I put a timeline on it? I cannot put a timeline on it because it's dependent on legal processes of other countries. But what I can say is we will spare no effort in this direction. And, again, a lot of this extradition is routed through, because the actual extradition process, the documents, etc., are all done by us. I mean, it's obviously the concerned agency or the ministry here, but MEA is very much involved in it, and we are giving it our fullest effort. जो आपका दूसरा सवाल, ये आपका जो सवाल जो था चीन के बारे में, देखिए राहुल गांधी जी जो हैं बहुत सारी चीज़ें कहती हैं, और मैं मानता हूँ राजनीति में लोग कहते हैं। अब उन्होंने ये भी कहा कि देखिए वो पंगोंग सो में पुल बना है। अब पुल बना है तो वो ऐसी जगह बना है जो चीन ने 1962 में कब्जा किया था। तो फिर कुछ लोग कांग्रेस पार्टी से कहने लगे कि आपके अरुणाचल में एक मॉडल विलेज बना है। अगर आप देखें, पार्लियामेंट के रिकॉर्ड देखें, ये जगह लोंगजू जो है चाइना ने 1959 में कब्जा किया था। तो कुछ देखिए, चाइना जो है 1950 से भारत के ज़मीन पे कब्जा कर चुका है। मेन पॉइंट है कि जो LAC में जो है, LAC की पेट्रोलिंग होती, हम लोग जो हैं पेट्रोलिंग बेस, हमारी फौज जो है पेट्रोलिंग बेस से निकल कर पेट्रोलिंग करके बेस पे वापस चले जाती। 2020 के बाद ये नहीं हुआ क्योंकि जब उन्होंने वो 2 अग्रीमेंट 93 और 96 अग्रीमेंट्स का उल्लंघन करके बहुत बड़ी मात्रा में फौज लाए, तो पेट्रोलिंग करके वापस जाना के बजाय हमें फॉरवर्ड डिप्लॉयमेंट करना पड़ा। अभी जो प्रॉब्लम क्या है, फॉरवर्ड डिप्लॉयमेंट की प्रॉब्लम है कि हम दोनों फॉरवर्ड डिप्लॉयड हैं, और फॉरवर्ड डिप्लॉयमेंट जैसे मैंने इनको समझाई उसी से तो टेंशन पैदा होता है। जो सॉरी, इंडिया यूएस, India, India US has really come a long way, and there are many, many reasons for it. Each reason is a solid reason in itself. You can look in this period size of the community growth. You can look at the technology part of the relationship. You can look at the trade of the relationship. You can look at the political convergence that we have, and you can look at the strategic interest. So I think there's a very compelling case for stronger and stronger business. We all know each other. We all know what the interests of our countries are, what their relationship with other countries are. I take all that into account. Now, because US has some tension or contradiction or problem with some other country, why should I let go of my interest? I am building American relationship in my interest. If they have a problem with somebody else, they have a problem. In fact, who knows, maybe sometimes the problem may even help me to advance my interest.
So, Naveen.
Hello, sir. Naveen Kapoor from ANI. Sir, can you give us a sense of status of India-Afghanistan relations? Any kind of, beginning of engagement, minimal engagement with them? Can you just throw a light on that?
Maha.
Sir, Maha Siddiqui from NDTV. So with the Ukraine war nowhere close to an end, and in fact taking a critical turn with critical infrastructure being targeted now, and the G20 summit less than 3 months away, do you believe that having a consensus on the leaders' declaration will be a Herculean task or a near impossible task?
Leaders' declaration. Abhishek Jha. Yeah. Microphone's not clean. Closer, please.
Okay. Sorry, sir. Abhishek Jha from CNN News 18. My question is regarding Congress leader Rahul Gandhi's recent visit to USA. He is reportedly visited White House and he has had a meeting also with somebody. In which capacity Rahul Gandhi is met people in White House, and also
him, no?
And also was MEA aware of his upcoming visit to White House?
Sir.
Sorry, Afghanistan. Look, we have a technical, we pull back the India-based diplomats and staff after Taliban took control of Kabul. Because at that time we had legitimate security concerns. A lot of other countries also did it. With the passage of time, we have sent back a technical team to the embassy. They have been there for some time. And their job is essentially, in a sense, to monitor the situation and to see how we can support the Afghan people in their hour of need, you can say, in a manner. Because they have, this is a country which had vaccine shortage, it had wheat shortage, it had medicine shortage, it had, there are projects there which will get into difficulty in the passage of time. So, the focus right now in Afghanistan is less, I would say, political. It is more like helping the Afghan people, because the Afghan people are people with whom we have a historical connect. So that is really the current state of the situation. The second question, your question about G20. Look, I remember last year, there were a lot of challenges in getting the final G20 declaration did, and I, in fact, commended even then the Indonesian presidency for making that big effort and getting the Bali Declaration. But I would also share with you that even at that time, a lot of us worked alongside with Indonesia. Obviously Indonesia was the chair, but we were part of a troika, and there were some countries who were not even members of troika, but who had an interest in the matter, and all of us put our collective energies together in that regard. My memory serves me right, last year, in fact, in September, I went to Moscow, and one of the main reasons I went to Moscow at that time was really to discuss this with my Russian counterpart. So this year, we are endeavoring to find a common landing point. There are differences of opinion even about what was agreed to in Bali last year. So how do we handle it? It's very hard for me. I mean, diplomats are still working at it. So I don't want to predict. I don't want to in a way, give too much details. I mean, I accept your point that it's a challenge. But, diplomacy is a business for optimistic people. So, so I think it's something that we would look at. And that last question which you asked, I can't believe you are serious, but I mean, look, if Rahul Gandhi goes somewhere, I mean, that is Rahul Gandhi's call. So, why would I have to get involved in it at all? So I don't even know, frankly, what he did or what he didn't do in respect of what you said.
Please.
Afternoon, sir. Rishabh from Times Now. So enough of Rahul Gandhi US visit. Our Prime Minister is visiting.
Thank you very much.
Prime Minister is visiting US next week, coming weeks. What will be on table? And is Prime Minister also visiting any other country around a US visit?
Swazini.
So Hasini Heather from The Hindu. I wanted to ask External Affairs Minister on the subject of Kulbhushan Jadhav, a former naval commander who is in prison in Pakistan, as well as the 8 former naval officers in prison in Qatar. The question really is, it's been nearly a year since the Qatar incident happened. It's been several years since Kulbhushan Jadhav remains in prison in Pakistan. Has the government given up on diplomatic options in order to have these Indians brought home safely? I refer not just to discussions at high levels, but also to creative options we've seen in the past in the Cold War between the US and Russia, for example, of exchange of prisoners. Thank you.
Yeah, please. I know there are lots of hands, but I'm sorry, we have limited time.
Hi, sir. I'm Siddhant from CNN News 18. So my question is regarding the recent US Congressional Committee report, which deals with China-related issues. And the report recommends strengthening NATO plus by including India. I want to know your position.
So the first question was Prime Minister's visit. What are your expectations? My sense is that you will get usually a prime ministerial visit is an occasion really for both countries to focus on, of course, intensifying the relationship or the cooperation. And if there are the tendency is normally to pick a few issues and focus, prioritize on them. Foreign Secretary has just come back yesterday night from US, and he held some discussions there. In the coming days, we are expecting some visitors, incoming visitors from the US as well. So we are working, in that direction. Now, what eventually comes out, and that's really one tough to predict. And even if I could, I'll spoil your fun if I did that. So I think I'll hold it till then. Would he go to another visit? I think we, usually Prime Minister's visit, we kind of keep working on his schedule, and then Arindam has the pleasure of sharing that at the right time with all of you. Suhasini, your question about Kulbhushan Jadhav and the Qatar case. They're very different cases, first of all. I mean, in the case of Kulbhushan Yadav, our view was that he was kidnapped by the Pakistanis, and he's been held in violation of a judgment of the ICJ. So I think the law is very clear, and we have to now see how to take that forward. The Qatar case is different. My understanding is that there have been 3 hearings so far. I think a 4th one is due sometime later this month. Even the full nature of the charges are not entirely clear to us. But what we are doing is we are giving the strongest possible support to the concerned people, including their legal representation, because we believe that their rights should be fully protected. And in a situation like this, I think they are entitled to strongest possible support. Now, your question, will there be any diplomacy around it? Look, I never rule that out. I mean, I even as a general proposition, because as I said, a large part of our outlook today is really, if Indian citizens are in difficulties of any kind, and these are 2 very exceptional situations, the sort of, I would say it is in the DNA of this government that we should do whatever we can, whether they are Indian students, which was your question, or Indian military officers, or just anybody else, or people in the Gulf who often face charges. The 3rd question on the congressional committee recommending NATO plus, see, one of the challenges of a changing world is how do you get people to accept and adjust to those changes. Even today, not just with this committee, I see this in analysis of various kinds and writings of people. A lot of Americans still have that NATO treaty construct in their heads. So any situation they deal with, they use that like a, it seems almost like that's the only sort of template with which, or only viewpoint with which they look at the world. The reality is that is not a template that applies to India. So I must say a lot of it is actually outside the administration. The administration understands this very, very well. So we have a situation where actually in many areas the administration has been very forthright, very understanding, very cooperative. And sometimes people mean well. I mean, in this case, I think they mean well. They really want to signal saying, let's do more with India. It's just they use a terminology because that is what is in their habit. So I would not go so much by the terminology. I would only appreciate the fact that a congressional panel has the sentiment to want to do more with India. I think that's a very good thing.
Nainima, right here.
Thank you for doing this, Minister. I'm Nainima Basu from ABP Live. Just one question, sir. This is the first time India became chair of the SCO, and this is a proud moment for us. Why is the decision taken to hold it in a virtual format? Thank you.
Next to you.
सर विजयलक्ष्मी हूँ मैं इंडिया टीवी से इधर सर इधर आप सर आपने कनाडा को लेकर के बात की कि किस तरह से वहाँ पर एक्सट्रीमिस्ट या सेपरेटिस्ट एलिमेंट्स हैं, लेकिन अगर प्रो खालिस्तानी एलिमेंट्स की बात की जाए तो यूएस, ऑस्ट्रेलिया, अभी राहुल गांधी जो कांग्रेस में विपक्ष के नेता हैं उनके भी इवेंट में खालिस्तान जिंदाबाद के नारे लगे। क्या ये एक भारत सरकार के लिए चिंता का विषय है और कैसे इसको डील करने के लिए आप सोच रहे हैं?
Namaskar, sir. Shailesh Kumar from National Defense. Sir, here. Sir, though you have spoken about it, but Mr. Rahul Gandhi has categorically stated in his last visit, the recent visit, that the China has occupied 1,500 square kilometer of India's territory. That is equal to the size of Delhi. This is not the first time he said. He said earlier too And since you said that it's not a territory issue, it's a forward movement issue.
A, keep it small, and B, I think Minister just answered this question.
Is this a matter of concern as the it's an election year? So can this escalate to any kind of military conflict if it is not resolved diplomatically?
I think you understand the question. Thank you.
First one, आपका था ना SEO ना? Huh? Look, I don't think, today in this day and age, whether you do a virtual meeting or a physical meeting, I don't think one is considered as necessarily less or more than the other. I think it's a call you take depending on who's coming, what is your situation. There are a lot of factors which go into it. So I would not like you to in any way think that this detracts from our seriousness and from our commitment to the SEO. I think our SEO presidency has a lot of achievements to show for it, and I assure you when the virtual summit takes place, you will see that in full flow. जो दूसरा सवाल जो था वो खालिस्तान वाला जो था, नहीं, जो see, it is not just in Canada. मैंने कभी नहीं कहा कि it is only in Canada. We are as opposed to it. Many of you have heard me criticize, the UK authorities for the lack of protection to the High Commission when Khalistani supporters took down our flag. We had some issues in Australia as well. So our point is this: look, they are a very small minority. We do not believe that they represent sort of any significant body of opinion. Our plea to these governments is, look, please understand, these are marginal elements, they are extremist elements, they're not good for you, they're not good for us, they're not good for the relationship. It's not a message limited to Canada. Canada came up because you people raised it and because certain things have happened recently in Canada. So if it was not Canada, if it had happened somewhere else, I would honestly say the same thing. The last issue. I mean, look, if you are talking territory, I have a problem with 38,000 square kilometers of territory. People make out as though something is happening now. I mean, it has been happening for a period of time, and we need to focus on what our border infrastructure is. How do we deploy our military? How do we maintain that deployment out there? And a lot of our forward deployment problems are because border was so badly neglected. I don't want to go into those famous statements that our best defense is neglect of the border so that other people can't come forward. But the result was our own troops were very severely, I would say, disadvantaged when they had to respond. And today, if you look, the average border infrastructure budget till 2014 was less than 4,000 crores. Today it is 14,000 crores. If you look at road, you look at tunneling, you look at bridges, it's gone up twice, thrice, 4 times. Look at even the equipment for our military. So instead, actually, we had even people trying to build border infrastructure. You remember all those environmental problems, clearances, which earlier on became an issue. So I think there are real issues here, and you should see it in totality. Look, I honestly feel there are certain issues where it's important for the country to have a serious debate. It's not my case, everybody should agree with me on every issue. But it should be a serious debate. It should not become a kind of a point scoring exercise, because at the end of it all, in the rest of the world, we don't look good.
So, if your permission, with the last round of questions, Geeta. Microphone to Geeta Mohan.
Geeta Mohan from India Today. Another question on China. This is satellite images that India Today has accessed, which shows that it's the middle sector in Uttarakhand where structures have come up from the Chinese side. Now, this is about 100 structures raised over a period of 1 month, 40 kilometers away from Pulam Sumda in Uttar